We're in a very unique time in watch collecting. The hype from a few years ago is tuning down, and collectively, many of us have a far greater knowledge than before. I would say the last 5 years have been the years of trends, fads, like different colorways, blues, greens, burgundies, you name it, putting integrated bracelets on everything, with some winners and some losers. And over this 5-year window, we have seen tons of competition between popular watch brands. And I would say a lot of this time has been dedicated to brands trying to figure out and communicate their identities to us the best. From it, say what we like, as tacky as some releases might have been, yes. Other pieces, they are brilliant. Not for everyone, but for us enthusiasts, simply brilliant. I don't know if it's just me, but I really enjoy making videos on subjects that have been and gone. When it comes to watches, I like looking back 2 or 3 years instead of the current trends. Sort of retracing those older steps and figuring out what best watch defined that period. And something resonated with me the other day, and I thought if I was to tap myself on the shoulder and say, hey man, these are the brands that are well known, that are great to find secondhand, that are well worth your time, and you should be looking into right now. So in a way, to my detriment, I guess, I am sharing my cheat sheet of brands that I am looking at this year and brands that I reckon we should all be paying attention to. Let's start with Sinn. And where do we begin? One of the best value for money brands out there. When it comes to the materials, the pure professionalism of these watches, how they are designed, very straightforward and utilitarian. It's a brand I've always paid attention to, but nothing yet has truly grabbed me. But that could change. Looking at the EZM range and the many variations, the U collection, the U212, the U1, the U50, the UX, and the more affordable, I put in air quotes, the more classically inspired STs. There is a wealth of good design to be found here, and the best part of all is you're not necessarily breaking the bank to get into these pieces. And the truth of the matter is these watches are so dependable and reliable, they end up being the watch that most folks gravitate towards whenever they're doing something demanding. For so many reasons, price especially, value especially, this brand has always been on my radar, and that's not going to change this year. Okay, Tudor watches. Cliche enough to talk about, I know, but when we look at these watches secondhand and value for money, what you're getting again, it is so hard to argue with what they offer. It's frankly astounding how some of their most loved watches are also some of the most affordable. But since the brand has also spent so much time ramping up production, diversifying their collections, they've given us even more opportunity to pick up pieces for a bargain. A Tudor Black Bay is now as common as a hen in a hen house. And I don't know if that is the correct idiom, but we're going with it. They're everywhere. The Pelagos, with its many variations of sizes, colors, it has expanded greatly. A subtle nod to the FXD, still my favorite and one true Tudor that I will always own. And what about the back catalog section, like the Black Shield, the Ranger, the P01, models that are so often ignored but are brilliant nonetheless. Spend some time looking for great deals on Tudors over the course of this year. The same can be said for my beloved brand Omega. The sheer diversity that this brand offers, that they can't keep up with, we can't either. The Seamaster collections, if we're talking about the heritage divers, or the professionals, or the Aquaterras, or the Planet Oceans, in there alone, it's its own category. The Speedmasters, I could be here for the rest of my life talking about the many variations that you can chase, but what about the underdogs like the Mark 40 or the Mark II? What about the many vintage references that you can find for a steal? Or how about going off the beaten path and look at the Constellation or the Globemaster? I still to this day believe that the Globemaster is one of the most beautiful watches they have ever designed, and it's not looked at enough. When you chalk up the quality of movements that are going into these watches, the coaxial escapement and all of the technology that has gone into them, when you look at how original their designs are, I would say at this stage, looking at prices, second-hand values, Omega is that perfect meeting point. Money you're spending, the quality of watch you're getting. And that's probably why I spend way too much time looking at these watches, in particular, secondhand. Breitling. I wish I could make more individual videos about these watches, but unless they are paired with more popular brands, it's very difficult to get the attention across. But Breitling is a brand you should be looking into a lot. Where do we even begin? The Navitimer collection? It's in its own world, but the Super Ocean collection? What incredible watches they have on offer. Whether you want something more modern, a little bit more upscaled, upsized, these are the way to go. Unless you're looking for something more heritage inspired, and you can look at the 57 collection. I've got to say, a piece like the Slow Timer or the Slow Motion Super Ocean that came out a few years ago, it's growing on me. And if you look hard enough, you can get these watches for the same prices or even less than a Black Bay. What about the outliers like the Premier a model line that the brand should be paying a lot more attention to and advancing. Vintage Breitling Premiers were absolutely beautiful back in the day. What about the Top Time? More heritage inspired, also deserving of a lot more attention by the brand. The Chronomat, the Super Chronomat, perfect meeting point between what you're getting from the Super Ocean and the Navitimer, with some outstanding traits to their name. Or the Aerospace, a true cult classic. This is coming from someone who spent most of last year wearing a Breitling, and I am besotted. It is such a good watch, good brand, amazing movements. Just get on them. Right alongside Breitling is Zenith, woefully underappreciated. All the better for us. Because if you want well-fitting watches that are slim in profile, that have brilliant chronograph movements, that are automatic, you cannot really ask for a better brand out there. I admire them so much because they do not have a typical playbook to follow. Just looking at the evolution of the Elite collection, or how the Pilot range has advanced. Now yes, we can look at their flagship like the El Primero and get lost in that for eons. Comes as no surprise to say it's one of the best chronographs I've ever owned. I daily wear this watch. With the date complication, it is so practical, it's just such good fun. But what about the Defy line and what it has been doing? From the integrated cases and bracelets, skeletonizing, adding chronograph complications, and with new developments like the Defy Diver, this brand is getting on the map slowly. Will they ever be able to outcompete brands like Tudor or Omega? Highly unlikely. But that is yet another reason why you should spend time exploring this name and the wealth of models that they have in their back catalog. An honorable mention that I haven't added to this list is IWC. A lot of their prices seem fairly reasonable on the second-hand market, from the Mark series of Pilot watches to the Big Pilot, the many variations of chronographs, the Portuguesa. There is a lot of talk that the Da Vinci line will be further expanded. But I personally would like to see this brand digging further back into their roots, the 1980s, in partnership with Porsche design and the things they used to create back then. I would say pursue IWC, especially models like the Mark 20, the Mark 18. If you look hard enough, you will find a great watch for a great price. Now, leading more into the classically inspired watches, Jaeger-LeCoultre, of course we know who they are, we know what they produce, but a model like the Reverso seems to be an eternal watch that you can get for a great price that's well worth chasing. If you look hard enough, you will find some brilliant watches available to you, and I spend a lot of time looking at JLC and what is on offer. Back of my mind, I keep asking myself, am I too young to own a Reverso? Is this sort of watch me, or is it too old school? But the design, you can't deny. Whether it's just the time only, the duo face, the many different sizes these watches are offered in. Now what about the Master Control? When we're looking at some of the best value for money annual calendars on the market, look no further. And it's just fascinating that you can get a Meteorite dial Master Control full annual calendar for less than the price of a sought after Rolex steel sports watch today. If that's not your taste, they have moon phases, they have the Geophysic. And if you're more interested in the sports side of the brand, you have the Polaris. An inset compressor style bezel, my favorite thing of all, Arabic numerals on the dial. And an honorable mention from yours truly is the Memovox. Last but by no means least, Glashütte Original. A name that has seen quite the resurgence over the last half decade, and where some of their inspirations seem almost entirely inspired by the 60s and 70s, can't deny they make some brilliant pieces. The CQ is an obvious choice for most of us. It's a very competent diver. It's got a lot of character to the way it's designed. There is a lot of variety just in here to choose from. But when we go down the more dressier side, looking at models like the Senator Excellence, the Senator 60s, 70s, so we start seeing watches that again have a more German-inspired base. But then also a lot of exuberance with the choice of Arabic numerals on the dials, the typefaces across everything. And what about the big dates on offer? The Pano Reserve, the Pano Reserve Lumen. Most of us would love the opportunity to own a Lunga 1. Here you're getting a Lunga 1 far more affordable, that is automatic, that harnesses a lot of those traits, but is also brimming with character of its own. So this was just a quick selection of 7 or 8 brands that I spend a lot of my time paying attention to that I think are well worth your time. There are also tons of honorable mentions in this category, but what I wanted to try and hammer home, thinking about it a bit more after recording this. Design has always been foremost in my selection process when it comes to chasing watches. The fact that most of these are attainable, that we can get at a great price. All of which have certain individual characteristics that make them all the more appealing and very much linked with the brands that they represent. It's what makes this hobby so much more engaging and enjoyable, at least for me. After doing this for long enough, chasing and owning some of the pieces that I do, I have learned that I prefer the outliers. I much prefer chasing after and enjoying the watches that other folks maybe don't look at enough. In there, you're not only finding immense value from a manufacturing and quality perspective, but as far as their designs go, the many variances and options available to you, you can also hit the sweet spot too. So out of interest, of all the brands that I've mentioned in this video, which one of them are you going to be spending the most time looking at this year? And I think for me, if I was to boil it down, it'll be a mix between Glashütte Original and Jaeger-LeCoultre. And all I can say is thank you for taking the time to watch this video and happy hunting, because there are some great watches out there to be found.